Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I am your Loremaster, here today to continue our month-long journey of misbehaving. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about one of two countries responsible for the establishment of the organization known as the Firebrands. Today, we look at the second. The lands filled with silver song, the rebellion which never truly ended, the land forever independent from Cheliax. Ravounel. Let's get started. First, some historic facts. The city of Lair is one of the oldest settlements in Ravounel, dating back to 1673 AR. It is also virtually independent, so that does not matter for today's video. Go see my Nogaba video for more on Lair. Regardless, their settlements have been on the Argo Isle for thousands of years, with Kintargo, the capital of Ravounel, being founded in 3213 AR, being the most recent. This region was part of the expansion of Lair, which established the entire region of Cheliax. However, this region did not include Ravounel. A clerical error made it so Ravounel is its own separate region. Notice was still ruled by the regent of Cheliax, so it did not make much of a difference, right? Hold on to that. Either way, the region was part of Cheliax and served as a major naval port when it was keeping control of Nidal. Then the Cheliax Civil War happened, and the region of Ravounel found itself caught up in the violence like anyone else. However, as the Throns gained more power, the rebellious spirit of the region made them push back harder, until a group rose known as the Silver Ravens, a 5-person adventuring band named after the statue of wondrous power they possessed. The group became one of the Throns' toughest enemies, especially with the creation of the Song of Silver, a song designed to weaken fiends. However, even the adventurers were overwhelmed, and the victorious Throns struck the existence of the last rebels from Cheliax history books. Which brings us to our first side tangent, the part of the show where old friends come back. As in... Your Laughing Salesman, here today for another tangent on items. God, it's been forever since I bought in a caravan. Next month, I promise. Either way, let's talk about the subclass of items known as the Statues of Wondrous Power. These items are statues made in the form of an animal with the power of transfiguration, not conjuration, common mistake, transfiguration into the animal in question, with several different abilities. But there are a variety of differences, usually using the same templates based on local animals or materials. These 9 I'm going to go through will take the entire time of my appearance today, so let's just go through them. First we have the Bronze Griffin, which turns into a normal griffin. We have the Ebony Fly, which turns into a giant fly. Wonderful air mount. We have Golden Lions, which always come in pairs. We have Ivory Goats, which come in 3 different flavors, whether you want them to ride, to attack, or to frighten. Marble Elephants are the largest and heaviest to carry around, but they give you a full-grown elephant, so nice trade-off. Obsidian Steeds give you the ability to travel across the plains, but with a chance of screwing over any good-aligned riders. We have Onyx Dogs, which have the greatest intelligence, which makes them wonderful travel companions. We have Serpentine Owls, which can transform to either an owl or a giant owl. Spectacular difference. Finally, we have the one which brought us here today, Silver Ravens, messenger birds which are the only statues that have maintained their inorganic form instead of shedding the silver for flesh. And we know how effective silver is against fiends, so. And, well, that's my time. I now return you to your regularly scheduled history lesson. Well, under Cheliax rule, Ravounel suffered like others suffered, but they seemed to be able to maintain their rebellious spirit stronger, managed to never fully be placed under the Thurns. This is because the Thurns, to gain power, made a fell pact with Hell to gain authority over all of Cheliax. And as mentioned earlier, Ravounel was never part of Cheliax, at least on paper, which is what the devils care about. Therefore, they were able to continue on until Knights of Iomedae began what was known as a glorious reclamation, far in the east of Cheliax. A new governor was assigned to each region, and Ravounel was given Barzilier Thurn, a man who, in an event known as the Night of Ashes, burned down any rebellious institution and initiated new, insane laws. But his main goal was, due to learning the secrets of the Ravounel contract as it is known, he wanted to gain control of Ravounel itself, to move up in the family's ranks, possibly even above his cousin Abigail Thurn herself. But in the end he failed miserably, his actions leading to not only the return of the Silver Ravens and their Song of Silver, but for Ravounel to learn it was not bound to Cheliax. And so the Thurn could do little, as Ravounel left them behind. For the government of Ravounel, it was established from the old government, since until Barzilier arrived, they were pretty on board with the area's rebellious nature. Therefore, the old governor, Gialia Binelius, I'm not even sure why I'm trying with names, but is now the ruler, taking on the old Cheliaxian title of Domina, in connection to the pre-Thurn glory days of the area. Along with the Domina is the Silver Council, an assortment of advisors from noble houses and wealthy power brokers who are glad that they bet on the right side. Well, that's why they are just advisors, not actually in charge. And of course, there's a local organization which has a decent amount of power and authority. Our side tangent number 2, the Silver Ravens. This is the second installment of the Silver Ravens, the first being the before-mentioned band of adventurers who protected Ravounel long ago. Cheliax defeated them and buried them in history, but now they and the legendary Song of Silver have returned thanks to the rebellion. Now the Silver Ravens stand ready to recruit and prepare for the time if, and when, their southern neighbor makes a move. And as an important note, the Firebrands accept both individuals and groups into their ranks, and the Silver Ravens are the one example we have of a group. Doubly so since the group is one of the founders. As for Silver Ravens themselves, some are rangers who train ravens in the group's honor, train them to take on several abilities that allow them to act as the original Silver Raven figures, while also adding in bardic spells to their own skill sets. There are ardent voices, bards who work to use lesser versions of the Song of Silver to track the invisible, counter spells, and also harm fiends. And with enough skill, the band of singers might learn to become an ardent dramaturge, one with the qualifications to sing the Song of Silver itself, doing various negative effects to fiends, but also learning to combine history with music to enhance bardic performances, and even learn lengthy masterpieces by heart. Now, going back, when it comes to the people of Ravounel, most of course are human, mostly Taldor, but some Voricians. Halflings make up about 10% of the population, though why to that, we'll likely have to wait till next week. Tieflings can find some respect here, and so come from the south, and orcs are commonly found in the Mendor Mountains. There is territory of aquatic elves, which we'll be covering in just a bit. Finally, within the Ravounel forest live Fae, Hags, Changelings, and one of the isolationist communities of Strix. Speaking of Strix, let us go with side tangent number 3. Strix legend tells of once beginning in a godly paradise, until a massive storm struck and sent them to wander in darkness. When the light returned, they found themselves around the area of Devil's Perch, and their heavenly forms have been twisted to their current appearances. They appear as blue-skinned and black-winged, and have eyes in the shape of tubes instead of balls, similar to how owls are, and therefore it means they turn their heads during conversations in ways others' ancestries see as awkward. They have a low birth rate, and therefore birth is always a large celebration in their communities. Their tribes are led by a female elder known as a Rokoa, who carries on the oral traditions of their ancestors. Because of how close-knit their tribes are, they see betrayal of one outside as a sign of how all outsiders are, and they have had enough interactions with those trying to exploit them to become isolationist. Not that they do not have agreements between themselves, of course. When an actual disagreement raises within a tribe, the end result is usually nothing less than breaking apart into separate tribes. There are 4 currently known tribes known by outsiders. The Cheliax ones at Devil's Perch, those within Mindspin Mountains, those on the Nindalese shores, and, as mentioned before, those in the Ravounel forest. So speaking of the Ravounel forest, now let's move on to locations. First up, the Silver City itself, Kintargo. Kintargo is a newer city. It's on a long populated shore of Argo Isle. Going through the districts quickly, so I don't do half a video just doing that. The northern point of Argo Island is the Castle District, home of both the government and the military. Starting from the west shore of the island, we have Old Kintargo, the oldest part of the city and where much fishing and few of the most interesting odds and end shops can be found. Moving on east, we have Jarvis End, home of nightlife and the famed Kintargo Opera House. Next is the Temple Hill, where the places of worship are congregated all in one spot. Ending off Argo Island is Red Roof, the affordable housing for the poor and middle class, and home to both many shops and markets, and also a sizable tiefling population. Crossing the Yolobilis River to the mainland, we have Yolobilis Harbor, the new harbor district. North of that is the Green, home of noble houses. And finally, pushing back to the coast, we have the Villagre, the school district for the local Alabaster Academy. Now as for the rest of Ravounel, I believe it is scarce enough to break it roughly into an east and west, divided by the Yolobilis River. And the Northern Islands, of course, but the mainland first. Starting with the west, we have 2 native towns. First is Akasazi, the town where one of the largest populations of aquatic elves and half-elves live. And likewise, Taskita is home to Ravounel's Strix, right in the middle of Ravounel Forest, which is a center of hunting and trapping for both those who are on the inside and on the outside, as long as neither accidentally meets up. This area is also home to the Minado Gap, the safest crossing between Ravounel and Cheliax, and also the Oak Rib Inn, where the peace treaty between the two was signed when Ravounel declared its independence. Outside of all those places, It is also the side that which borders the ocean the most, and has some notable navigational landmarks / hazards, like the goblin-infested Cape Dis and the haunted Dismal Niche. Now on east of the landmass, it is a little more sparse. After all, this is the half the country which is mostly dwelled with Nidal. It is more likely to see small farm communities on the northern plains than actual large villages. Though there are a few. We have Cypress Point, a small fishing village which is seeing new growth under the independent government, and White Rock, the main market for all of the farm folk in the area. It is also around here that the Ravounel ditches are found, large gashes where water of the Ulobilis River flow into, creating an area where many of the riverboats congregate, creating its own little community. Finally, we have the islands. The southernmost is Vire Island, which, as mentioned, Vire is more or less its own independent city-state. The city only takes up a small part of that island. The rest is devoted to farms, mines, and of course whole hordes of kobolds and bugbears. And further north, we have Deepmaw, a penal colony used during the Cheliaxian days, but which the Ravounel government has tried to abandon. Emphasis on tried. It's hard to abandon something when all there is when you find it is a ghost town, and the only survivors are half mad and rambling about lights from below. Which brings us to our final side tangent of the night. From an unexpected place, but stay with me. So, Fleshwarps. I know, stay with me. Fleshwarps are those who have had their bodies twisted to the point where they no longer are the creatures they were before. Some use it as a general term which includes the likes of flesh golems or mutants. But generally, Fleshwarps are produced by a few magical traditions, which have risen independently from each other. There are those traditions practiced by the Drow, taught to them originally by the demon lord Hargenti, which is used as a science of pain, a process which warps one creature into another with perfect, painful consistency. Second, there was a practice in Thessalonia, started by the Rune Lord of Wrath and the knowledge she gained from the Cliptoff Lord Yoggathoth. And of course, the sin spawns which have become powerful servants of eventually all 7 domains, and still exists in ruins till this day. And there is Nex, unbound from all fell influence except dedication to progress, who are working to create super soldiers and find ways to do so with as little pain as possible. The blasphemers. That said, these are the largest flesh-warping traditions, but not the only instances of flesh warping. For instance, aboleths use a process which falls under the umbrella of flesh warping, which created creatures like the Oz-and-Kedi, or more relevant to today's area, the Scrum. Fishy super soldiers, whose community fell apart during Earthfall, and now live in weak-minded communities in several places, including the Ulobilis River, and therefore are constant thorn in the side of countries like Ravounel. One last important thing to mention is local faiths. When it comes to the temples in the area, at the time under Cheliax rule, there was the main temple dedicated to Asmodeus, a diplomatic temple dedicated to Zon-Kuthon, a former Calistrian temple with purpose to one of Abadar, a temple to Shaelin, and a smaller temple to Eredin. After the revolution, there were 5 local faiths who helped, and who were, potentially it's an adventure path story, given places of respect when Asmodeus was run off. There, of course, was Aradar and Shaelin, as above, but also the worship of Serenray, one of the leaders of the rebellion. The local chapter of Kain and Kaelin who helped after their bar was burned down in the Night of Ashes. And, of course, our girl, Milani. Which brings us to the end of today's video. In reality, I just want to talk about the Silver Ravens this week, but cover the whole burgeoning country was nice. Next week, we are going to do something similar. We are going to go over an entire topic just to cover another band of freedom fighters. Which group is this? Find out next time.